In the grand halls of the United Tan Federation's Council, tension weighed heavy in the air, as thick as a storm cloud about to burst. Towering metallic walls, adorned with holographic banners of the proud Tan Eagle, seemed to close in on the room's occupants. The diplomats, military officers, and AI consultants of humanity sat around an enormous circular table, eyes locked on a hologram projecting the terms of an uneasy peace, a peace so fragile it threatened to shatter with a single wrong move. This was more than a negotiation. It was the moment that would determine the fate of the galaxy. The Alvaran Empire, their longtime rival, loomed as an ever-present threat. They hadn't engaged in open warfare but had waged a different kind of battle, an economic and territorial Cold War, pressing humanity's fledgling colonies to the breaking point. The Alvarans, an ancient warrior race, were legends, evolved on a high-gravity world. Their dense muscle mass and ruthless agility made them living weapons. In contrast, humans, newcomers to the galactic stage, had only recently ventured beyond their solar cradle, driven by resilience and a knack for adaptation. Both sides knew the cost of war, billions of lives, entire sectors obliterated. Yet the terms of peace proposed were unsettling. "It's barbaric." General Marwick's fist crashed onto the table, making the hologram flicker. "We're supposed to send one of our soldiers to be bonded to an alien as part of some kind of breeding ritual? This isn't diplomacy, it's insanity." The hologram stabilized, showing an Alvaran in all its alien majesty, tall, regal, with polished silver skin that shimmered under the council's lights. They were intimidating and yet strangely beautiful. Despite assurances, the concept of such a bond felt profoundly unsettling. "We don't have a choice," Ambassador Hayes countered, her voice calm but strained. "The Alvarans have already begun expanding into the fringe systems. If we don't secure this treaty, invasion is the next step. We aren't ready to face them in open conflict. Not yet. This bond is a ceremonial gesture, a way to solidify trust between our species." "But why must it involve breeding?" a young diplomat interjected, his voice quavering. The very idea sent shivers through the room. Hayes sighed. "They are a warrior race. Their customs are rooted in strength and legacy. To them, a bond isn't legitimate unless it produces offspring. It symbolizes a shared future, a merging of power." Her eyes flicked toward General Marwick, who scoffed in disbelief. The weight of desperation pressed on the room like a suffocating blanket. Humanity needed peace, but the price seemed unbearably steep. The atmosphere in the room was electric, a tangible force pressing down on Sergeant Marcus Hale. His heart raced, the gravity of the moment almost suffocating him. The weight of the treaty, the hopes of humanity, everything balanced on the edge of this ceremony. "Do you, Zella of the Alvaran Empire, accept this human as your bondmate to share in the future of your people and protect this alliance?" The Alvaran priest's voice echoed solemnly through the grand chamber. Zella hesitated, her violet eyes flickering with emotions she'd never dare reveal. Then, with a brief nod, she answered, "I do." The priest turned to Hale, his gaze piercing. "Do you, Marcus Hale of the United Terran Federation, accept this Alvaran as your bondmate, to ensure peace between your species and hers?" Hale met Zella's fierce eyes. A silent understanding passed between them, one forged in uncertainty and duty. He nodded firmly. "I do." With those two simple words, the treaty was sealed. The bond, a fragile yet monumental connection, had been formed. But as Hale and Zella exchanged one last, searching glance, both knew the real test was only just beginning. Chapter 3: The Unexpected Bond. The ceremony, though formal and symbolic, left a weight neither Hale nor Zella had anticipated. The implications of their bond ran far deeper than politics. It was now personal, an uncharted territory fraught with tension and duty. For Zella, the idea of being tied to a human grated against every instinct. She was a warrior, her people prizing strength and dominance. Bonding with a species that appeared physically weaker felt like a blow to her honor. Yet, the significance of the alliance loomed large. Her people needed this. Hale was no less burdened. A soldier accustomed to battles and strategy, he now faced a challenge unlike any he had encountered, navigating the delicate web of Alvaran customs. As he stood in the aftermath of the ritual, watching Zella from across the room, he sensed a deeper complexity beneath her fierce exterior, something vulnerable, almost fragile, though well hidden. They were escorted from the ceremonial hall by a mix of human and Alvaran officials, walking side by side through the dim corridors of the underground complex. Silence hung thick between them, a silence born of uncertainty rather than animosity. Once they reached their shared quarters, an ornately decorated room blending human and Alvaran aesthetics, Zella turned to Hale, her gaze cold and assessing. "You performed your part well, human," she said icily. "But do not think for a moment that this changes anything between us. This bond is one of necessity, not desire." Hale stood his ground, calm and unshaken. He had anticipated her hostility. "I understand," he replied, his voice steady. "We both know this is about peace, nothing more." Zella tilted her head, curiosity flashing briefly in her violet eyes. "You speak as if you understand the gravity of this bond, but you do not. To you, it's a mere diplomatic act. To my people, it is sacred." Hale's jaw tightened. He understood more than she realized. This was more than a mission. It was a heavy responsibility he had willingly shouldered. But he knew words would do little to change her mind. Her pride and sense of duty were barriers he'd have to navigate carefully. "I know this isn't easy for you," he said quietly. "And I don't expect you to like it. But we both have a responsibility, and I'm willing to make this work, on your terms." Zella's eyes narrowed, but there was a flicker of surprise, quickly concealed. Her posture remained defensive, but something in her stance softened. "You are different from what I expected," she admitted, her voice cautious. "The humans I've met were either weak or arrogant. You seem different." Hale allowed a small smile. "I'm just a soldier doing his job." Zella huffed, a sound that might have been amusement, though her expression remained serious. "We shall see." Hale had come to understand the layers of complexity beneath Zella's fierce exterior. He admired her discipline, her honor, and the way she shouldered the weight of her people's expectations. What had begun as a diplomatic necessity was becoming something far more personal. But as their connection deepened, so did the dangers that lurked around them. Just a few weeks after the bond ceremony, the first signs of trouble began to surface. The neutral planet where they were stationed suddenly teemed with activity. Ships flooded into orbit, and urgent diplomatic messages buzzed across communication channels. A growing sense of unease settled over the human and Alvaran diplomats. Rumors spread like wildfire. Factions on both sides were discontent with the treaty. Zella's warrior instincts had never dulled, and she could sense the storm brewing. She had been through enough battles to recognize the signs of impending conflict. Many within the Alvaran Empire saw the bond with a human as a disgrace, a betrayal of their warrior pride. Meanwhile, some humans still viewed the Alvarans as nothing more than a lurking threat. One evening, as Zella stood on the balcony of their shared quarters, staring out at the star-filled void, the tension bore down on her. Hale, observing her unease from inside, stepped out to join her. The cool night air brushed against his skin, but it was the troubled look in Zella's eyes that made his heart clench. "Something's wrong, isn't it?" Hale asked quietly, leaning against the balcony's stone railing. Zella didn't look at him. Her gaze remained fixed on the stars. "There are forces conspiring against this alliance," she said, her voice a low murmur. "Factions within my empire believe that bonding with a human is a sign of weakness. They are already preparing to challenge the treaty." Hale frowned, a sense of dread washing over him. "And on our side, there are plenty who don't trust the Alvarans. I've heard whispers of renegotiating or even abandoning the treaty altogether." Zella turned to face him, her violet eyes glowing with frustration and worry. "If the treaty fails, there will be war. And this time, there won't be any negotiations." Hale nodded, the gravity of the situation pressing on him. He had known from the beginning that this alliance was fragile, but now it felt as if they were standing on a crumbling ledge. He met Zella's intense gaze, a sudden determination flaring within him. "Then we need to show them," he said, his voice resolute. "We have to prove that this bond isn't a weakness. We need to make both sides see the strength in unity." Zella raised an eyebrow, intrigued by his sudden conviction. "And how do you propose we do that, Sergeant Hale?" Hale took a deep breath. "We need to act, to take on a mission that demonstrates our strength as a team. Something high profile. You're one of the most respected warriors in the Alvaran Empire, and I've seen enough combat to hold my own. If we can prove ourselves together, maybe we can change their minds." Zella considered his words, her expression thoughtful. It was a bold plan, and a dangerous one. But the more she thought about it, the more it made sense. Her people respected strength, and if she could prove that this bond had made her stronger, it could change everything. Hale, despite being human, had earned her respect, a feat few others had accomplished. "You are suggesting we risk our lives to save this alliance?" Zella said, her voice contemplative. Hale shrugged. "It's what we signed up for, isn't it? We both knew this wouldn't be easy. But if we don't try, everything we've worked for will be lost." A rare, small smile touched Zella's lips. "You are more Alvaran than you realize, Hale." Hale chuckled, a spark of warmth cutting through the tension. "I'll take that as a compliment." The opportunity to put their plan into action came sooner than expected. The next day, a communication arrived from Alvaran High Command. A notorious pirate faction had been raiding outlying Alvaran and Terran colonies, wreaking havoc on supply lines. The Alvarans had been unable to track them down, and Terran forces were spread too thin to respond effectively. The Alvaran Emperor himself had requested Zella to lead a strike team to eliminate the threat. "Let me come with you," Hale said when Zella informed him of the assignment. "This is the perfect mission to prove ourselves." Zella hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "Very well. But understand, this will be dangerous. These pirates are not to be underestimated." Hale grinned, his eyes gleaming with determination. "Dangerous missions are my specialty.